So here's our vocab terms. We've got the law of demand and the law of supply. The law of demand, you just got to write it down. You just got to have the basic idea of what it means. So the law of demand says that as prices rise, people will buy less, so the quantity falls. So there's an inverse relationship. As one goes up, the other goes down. So price falls, quantity rises. As price rises, quantity falls. The second one is the law of supply. And in this one, we have a straight-on relationship. So as price rises, the quantity rises because now we're talking about supply. These are the people that are selling the good. So if the price goes up, I want to sell more of that good. And so it doesn't matter what I'm selling. If I'm selling crayons to used cars, if I get a higher price, I want to sell more of that. So law of demand, as price rises, the quantity falls. Law of supply, as price rises, the quantity will also increase. That leads us to an equilibrium point. And what equilibrium is the point where supply and demand meet each other. And so it's the perfect price for whatever the item is. If you think of going to an auction, all you're trying to do is find the equilibrium point. The seller wants the maximum price, the buyer wants the minimum price, but he's got to outbid everybody else. And so eventually we find the perfect price where one buyer gets the item, one seller sells the item, and that's what an equilibrium point is. It can change a lot if new information comes along, but right then, it's the perfect price. Our next one is elasticity. And what elasticity tells us is how sensitive is this item to a change in the price? Will the quantity that we sell change a lot if we change the price even a little bit? And so it's a scale. At the far end of it, we find that some items are very inelastic. If there's no alternative to buying that item and you have to have it, the price is very inelastic. If I change the price, if I double the price, if I cut the price in half, I'll still sell about the same amount of it. Something like brain surgery is a very inelastic item. At the other end of the scale, you've got items where the demand for them is very elastic. The two things that will cause that to happen is if there's a lot of substitutes for that item, and if there are wants, if the item is a want rather than a need. So something like Pepsi is very elastic in its demand because I can buy Coke, I can buy Mountain Dew, I can buy Sprite, and I don't need to have Pepsi. I can drink something else or I don't have to drink pop at all. And so that makes Pepsi very elastic in its demand. Brain surgery very inelastic in its demand. And that whole concept there, that range, is elasticity. Our next items are price ceilings and price floors. And this is where the government decides they don't like the equilibrium price point. They say, we don't want to let supply and demand decide this. We want to artificially put in either a price ceiling, which says you can't charge any more than this. So the price is supposed to be here, but they keep the price lower. It's called a ceiling because you can't push up the ceiling. Or a price floor. The price is supposed to be here, and yet you can't get down to that point because they've put a floor in it that makes a minimum. And both of those kind of mess up supply and demand, but the government sometimes does those. The price ceiling that is most common is the one that we're going to talk about, which is a rent control. They control how much, what is the upper limit for how much a rent could be in some towns. And the price floor, the one that we're going to talk about the most in this unit, is of course the minimum wage, which says you can't charge less than, in this case, $9.45 per hour for your labor.